Hello and welcome, dear viewers, to a new edition of your program, The World Today, a daily program where we bring you the latest on the different headlines and different newspapers. And we have with us, joined in the studio today, is Mr. Mohamed Ansary, a freelancer translator and a researcher who's going to be giving us more analysis about the whereabouts of every news that we're going to be reading. And we start off with a newspaper, the Egypt Independent, where the headline reads, Sisi wants Daba nuclear contract finalized as soon as possible. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi stressed in a meeting on Monday that the contracts for the construction of the Daba nuclear station should be ready for signing as soon as possible. Al-Sisi met Monday with Prime Minister Sharif Ismail, Electricity Minister Mohamed Shakir, and the head of the Armed Forces Engineering Authority, Major General Kamil al-Wazir. Shakir shared the outcome of his recent visit to the Russian capital, Moscow, where he met with a number of senior officials from the Russian nuclear firm and to discuss the establishment of the nuclear plant in the northern area of Daba, said Presidency spokesman Ali Youssef in a statement. The outcome of the talks in Moscow were positive, and negotiations over the contract for the plant's construction are in their final stages, according to Shakir. Egypt has considered building a nuclear power station in Daba for several decades and has been in negotiations with Rosatom since 2015 over plans for the state-owned firm to fund and construct the plant in Egypt for completion by 2022, Reuters reported in November of last year. Sir, what are your expectations towards a Daba project in Egypt?
Yeah. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and happy Ramadan.
Too,
happy Ramadan. Of course, this is, according to many analysts, one of the biggest, and if not the biggest, loan project in the modern history of Egypt. $20 million expected to be paid by Russia and returned by Egypt over the last 10 years, with an interest of about 3% or 3.5%, something like that. So the project is very large. It's expected to permanently provide the energy required by Egypt for the developmental projects and for the electricity coverage of the entire country. As we know, until now, only about 60 to 70% of the villages in the rural areas are covered by electricity, and about 30 to 40% still need to be covered. And I think this project, when it will be finalized, will definitely solve in covering the entire country with electricity, in addition to providing energy for other mega projects taken by the government.
Sir, from your own point of view, what are the main reasons and causes behind the delay of the start and the construction of this project that we're discussing now?
We know that the area, Al-Daba, which is regarded by many experts as the most appropriate area to construct a nuclear power energy settlement, has been under a lot of, there was a lot of talk about it. There were, during Mubarak's, for the ex-president, there was an attempt by some businesses and companies to take it and use it as an extension of the North Coast tourist projects. And this kind of row or conflict was also during Sadat, and continued until the last days of Mubarak. President Sisi, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, took the decision that this area will be allocated towards the energy settlement, and he took a decisive decision, and he took it over with ending the conflict about it. So I think the conflict about the area was the reason for the delay of the project for many years.
Do you think, sir, it's going to be a good idea to establish a nuclear plant here in Egypt, in Al-Daba?
Absolutely, it will be a very good idea. In addition to other locations, like for example, what is going on now by Siemens, the German company in Beni Suef, which is going to be as huge as Dab'a almost. These projects all are very important and very essential to revive the economy and provide the energy required for carrying the mega projects that has been the label of Sisi's era.
And we move on, sir, to Ahram Online, and we read the headline: residents flee as fighters near IS group held Syria town monitor. And we read thousands of civilians fled a key town in northern Syria held by the Islamic State group IS early on Tuesday as US-backed Kurdish and Arab fighters closed in. The Syrian Democratic Forces are advancing in Manbij from 3 directions after crossing the Euphrates River from their northeastern stronghold last week in a major offensive against the jihadists. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported overnight they advanced to within 5 kilometers. Like 3 miles of Manbij from the north, observatory head told AFP. Later on Monday, SDF fighters has pushed to within 2 kilometers, just over 1 mile of the town to the south and around 7 kilometers, 5 miles to the east. Daesh has begun allowing civilians to flee towards the west, whereas before they had banned anyone from leaving, he also reported. He said IS fighters were holding their positions, but thousands of residents had left. Manbij lies at the heart of the last stretch of territory along the Turkish border, still under IS group control. Sir, the question we're going to be asking here is, what are the recent efforts made by the international community towards resolving the Syrian crisis?
The recent efforts are a continuation of Geneva 1, 2, and 3. And of course, an attempt to resolve the decision by some opposition forces from the Syrian negotiation alliance to withdraw from the talks. But if we go to the battlefield or the village of Manbij, which is part of the Raqqa province, which is under attack for the last, which is under efforts to liberate it from Daesh over the last few days. Manbij, the significance of it is that it's the first stronghold of Daesh to be totally evacuated. So this. Why I'm referring to the battlefield now, because there is a close connection between the battlefield and the negotiation and the efforts of the United Nations. With Daesh out of Manbij, which is a strategic location, this will fortify and strengthen the efforts of the United Nations in the negotiations table, and will convince more and more from the non-Daesh opposition teams and groups to rejoin, perhaps, the negotiations. So the battlefield is significant on the political arena and the UN efforts. Even though the Kurds, of course, who are a major player in this military initiative, offensive, are having their own agenda. They have a different agenda, of course. But in the final analysis, it all pours into the efforts of the United Nations.
Sir, there were talks of a possible ceasefire during the holy month of Ramadan that we're witnessing now, but it doesn't seem to be obtained yet. What do you think?
It will not be obtained, and simply because the conflicting parties are mainly interested about political and strategic gains. Ramadan perhaps is, I don't know exactly, but it's for them a month like any other month. And we have not seen the fighting stopping in Yemen. We have not seen stopping in Iraq. We have not seen stopping in Libya. So there is no reason to expect that it's going to stop in Syria because of the months of Ramadan. Ideally, it should, but it should.
Sir, the humanitarian crisis in Syria, how do you evaluate it?
The human crisis is not operating as it should. It is being hampered by many factors. Perhaps the Russian presence and the Iranian presence are very important factors. The Russian and the Hezbollah, of course.
The Russian and Iranian presidents are important factors in the hampering of the humanitarian.
Absolutely, because we have seen that the Russians and the Iranians have circled many cities or sieged many cities over the last few months with Hezbollah militias and prevented humanitarian relief from entering just because the controllers of these villages and cities are from Sunni factions, from other Sunni factions. I'm not talking about Daesh, of course. I'm talking about others like whom we might agree or disagree on how extremist they are, but they are not Daesh. That's technically or categorically different from Daesh. So we have seen that in many villages. And I think this is the main obstacle. The second obstacle is also the fighting between the factions themselves, including, I'm not now excluding any factions, including the Sunni factions. They are fighting each other. They are fighting, Daesh fighting Nusra, Nusra sometimes fighting the Free Syrian Army or the remnants of the Free Syrian Army, the few remnants of the Free Syrian Army. And this fighting, this kind of fighting is a major obstacle, or is a second major obstacle against reaching, against the humanitarian aid reaching the people.
Sir, I want to ask you, concluding the Syrian situation, how do you see that the parliament convened today and President Bashar al-Assad was giving a speech on state TV in light of this current situation taking place in Syria? How do you read this?
President Bashar al-Assad, I haven't, to be honest, this was just today, so I haven't read,
enough about it, yes.
Bashar al-Assad wants to fit in the scheme of the United Nations program for political transition and elections, but with some kind of twist to it or amendment to it. Bashar al-Assad wants to be able to convince the Syrian people that he can win elections, free elections, by a considerable percentage or rate of votes. And he's trying to project a political civil, appearance.
He actually people today that without the will of the Syrian people and the high turnout of voters, this parliament wouldn't be convened.
Yeah. I haven't seen it, but I can guess. Yeah.
He actually did
this kind of speech and political maneuvers, they all fit into an option. He wants to keep the door open for political solutions if the military balance weighs against him at some point.
Sir, concluding the Syrian crisis, how do you see the Egyptian efforts towards resolving the Syrian crisis, which is becoming a very big problem in the Arab region as we talk?
It's very essential for us and for our Ministry of Foreign Affairs to step up and raise our efforts to solve the Syrian problem. The Syrian problem Syria lies within our national security, definitely our national security sphere, and we need a stronger Syria trying to revive the Arab regional system. right now, it's very dangerous because if Syria is divided, the entire region is under the threat of division, especially the Gulf, which is a very dangerous option.
Okay, so we move on to the Gulf News, which is a newspaper, and we read 11 killed in bomb attack targeting Istanbul police, which took place earlier this morning. Unfortunately, a bomb attack targeted a police vehicle on Tuesday in a central Istanbul district, killing 11 people, including 7 policemen. Police reported. More than 36 people were also injured in the attack, and the remote-controlled bomb exploded as a service shuttle carrying police officers was passing by in the Bayezid district of Istanbul, according to media reports. Ambulances and fire engines were dispatched to the scene. Turkey is on high security alert after 2 deadly attacks in Istanbul this year, blamed on Daesh, and a pair of attacks in Ankara that claimed by Kurdish militants and killed dozens. The 2 attacks in Ankara were claimed by the Kurdistan Freedom Falcons, a radical splinter group of the better-known outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party. Sir, with the increase in the terrorist attacks taking place in Turkey recently, does this indicate a political crisis inside Turkey taking place?
Absolutely. It cannot be seen in separation from the overall political policies, local policies of Erdogan. Erdogan started his rule in November 2002, projecting himself as a liberal Islamist reformer, and he actually managed to improve the economy a lot. But over the last 4 or 5 years, especially after the Arab Spring and his ambitions to be the leader of an some sort of an Islamic empire in the region, this reflected too much on his local policies. He has excluded many influential figures. He has alienated his allies, like the reformer, what's his name, Fathallah Gulen, also Oglu, his prime minister, who is now out of prime minister. He alienated his friends. He made more enemies. He's seemingly in sort of a troubled situation. And this gave way to the Kurds, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, and Daesh to try and make use of the chaos, of the political chaos
taking place in Turkey. Sir, what does the Kurdistan Party want from Erdogan's government?
The Kurdistan Party, first, historically, they started as part of the larger national Kurdish movement in the region, Iran, Syria, Turkey, Iraq. As the Turkish state became stronger over years, they moderated their, or seemingly moderated their demands, and they just called, and now they just call for self-rule and learning and teaching the Kurdish language. But there is no really a ceiling to what could evolve, from the Kurdistan Workers' Party. As any movement, it has radicals and reformers, or radicals and moderates, and it is part of a national, still part of a national movement of Kurds. The Kurds actually have not all of them, but some of the leaders. They also they actually have a plan of what is Kurdistan, future Kurdistan, to be like in the region, and they have even a map for it. So you can't separate the Kurdistan Workers' Party aspirations from the regional aspirations.
Sir, quickly before we wrap up today's episode of The World Today, I'd like to ask you, how do you see the future of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan?
It's a very,
but quickly, sir, please.
Yeah, it's a very volatile future.
So you don't see him lasting for long?
I don't. My expectations is that he's not going to last for long. He's under attack. He's shaking. He's not going to be able to stabilize his.
Mr. Mohamed Ansary, a freelancer, translator, and a researcher. We thank you so much for joining us in today's episode of World Today, and we wish you a very happy holy month of Ramadan. Dear viewers, this was all for today's episode of World Today. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Rana Al-Qassas, and I have the pleasure of presenting today's episode. And until we meet again with a new team tomorrow, from me, myself, stay tuned for more to come up here on Nile TV International.